host, Joel Present. You're watching Wrestling with Politics, and today we're going to be discussing this entire situation going on in Venezuela because, as we all know, the United States has decided to arrest the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, in quite the unprecedented move from the Donald Trump administration. Never before have we so boldly just walked into a foreign nation and taken over their whole president in the middle of the night. And personally, I'll be honest with you, when I heard the news, I had a very bad taste in my mouth. And I'll even go as far as to admit it. This pissed me off because one of my key political principles and one of the reasons that millions of people voted for Donald Trump when he was on the campaign trail, it was because he offered people a non-interventionist approach and he promised to put America first. And this decision to go into Venezuela and overthrow its leader and start bombing the place, it's the exact opposite of what Donald Trump promised. So if you're a Trump supporter, you should be pissed off right now. But more importantly, if you're an American, you should be pissed off right now because this is yet another instance where your taxpayer dollars are going to be sent and used to fund anything but the urgent problems that are going on right here in the United States. And there's a lot of problems that need to be addressed. And that's the key problem with this situation because we have a lot of problems in America. We have kids who need to be educated. We have homeless people on the street. We have bridges that need to be fixed. But your president is more concerned with whatever the hell is going on in a foreign country. And that gets to the other key point in this discussion. And there's a lot to unpack here. But if you listen to the mainstream media, propaganda, and that's what it is, propaganda on this issue, they'll tell you that Maduro was a bad guy who stole the 2024 election in his country and that he was a dictator and that Venezuela is this horrible country and the United States, we're actually doing the right thing by going into this country and overthrowing its leader, believe it or not. And I just have to say that line of argument, it's the biggest piece of easily debunked propaganda that I've ever heard in my life for multiple reasons. And reason number one is that even if you accept the argument that Maduro is a criminal and that Venezuela is this horrible shithole country, what the hell does that have to do with the United States? People are sick and tired of this argument and of this action of seeing the United States act as if we're the world's police. We've seen what happens time and time again when the United States military and its CIA, more specifically, has gone into foreign countries and overthrown their leaders and bombed the living shit out of them in the name of democracy. And over again, the same result has occurred, whether it was Iraq, Libya, Afghanistan, Somalia, Kuwait, the list goes on and on. We've tried this exact same experiment before, time and time again, and every single time the country we went into, it was worse off. Every single time the country we went into, it was an even bigger shithole than when we went in. So to those who think that the United States, that we're magically going to go into Venezuela and actually this time we're going to make it a better place, I hate to say it, but you're seriously mistaken. And even worse than that, you are being propagandized and you are being lied to. And this one, it's not even hard to prove. Donald Trump, he's literally been on television every single day admitting that we're going into Venezuela and we're going in there to take their oil. That's the one thing that sets Donald Trump apart from the rest, even though he's a complete puppet and he's carrying out the agenda of the deep state and the military industrial complex by invading Venezuela. And that's utter bullshit. But what in the past would have been a coordinated propaganda campaign to mislead the American public that would have gone on for months, what in the past would have been that propaganda campaign in the name of democracy to convince people that we're doing the right thing, That argument is completely fallen apart and it's completely been destroyed by Donald Trump because in 5 minutes the guy goes on TV and he blatantly says it. We're going in there for the oil. So I have no idea how, especially in this late date of 2026, how is anybody still falling for the propaganda? It still baffles me because the United States clearly does not have the best interest of Venezuela at heart. And you would think that that would be obvious to say, but it's not. The propaganda machine, it's more powerful than you think. And it's to the point where my own wife came up to me and said, but look, the Venezuelan people, they're celebrating that Maduro was captured. That must mean that it's a good thing, right? The people in Venezuela, they wouldn't possibly be celebrating this guy's capture if he wasn't a bad guy, right? And when it comes to this, I'm not going to deny it. There's definitely legitimately people in Venezuela who are probably happy and celebrating Maduro's capture. But number one, why is that what we are being shown by the media? You have to think about this. Clearly, the media is trying to manufacture a narrative that we're doing this for moral reasons, that couldn't be any further from the truth. Trump, he's already come out and said that it was about the oil. And if you really want to get into this, it's not just about the oil. It's also about the fact that if you look into Venezuela, and I'll admit it, I didn't know much about Venezuela before this happened, but I've done my research. And what I've discovered at the end of that research is stunning. Because if you look into Venezuela and its abducted leader, Nicolas Maduro, you'll quickly find out that Maduro was an anti-imperialist and a socialist who was diametrically opposed 100% to the imperialist motives of the United States. And so I might not know much about Venezuela, but I do certainly know a lot about the United States, the contemporary United States, and we should all know that by now the United States never goes into these situations with pure intentions. As a matter of fact, if we know our history, we all know that the United States, since the Cold War, has made it its mission, its die-hard mission, to discredit socialism and destroy any country who purports to believe in socialism. And when I was doing my research, that's exactly what I discovered. They tell you that Venezuela is a shithole country and that Maduro's a horrible president and that this failing economy, it must be the result of his failing socialist policy, right? But what they don't tell you is that on the back end, when Venezuela was going through its worst financial crisis in 2014, the US decided to place crippling sanctions on Venezuela. And not just that, but the United States and our allies like Canada, the UK, and Israel have also placed crippling sanctions on Venezuela. And beyond that, the United States has also threatened its own corporations with legal and financial repercussions if they choose to do business in Venezuela. So we've essentially cut them out from the world economy and kicked them at their worst point, at their lowest point. We've ensured at every single instance that Venezuela is cut off at their knees economically, and at every single instance that they're cut off from the world economy, but somehow people argue that the United States has the best interest of Venezuela at heart. The US, it's literally been doing everything in its power for the past 10 years to screw over Venezuela. So the argument that we are now all of a sudden going to do the right thing and make Venezuela a better country, or even more ridiculous than that, the idea that we're going to bring freedom to Venezuela, it's complete bullcrap. It's absolutely preposterous. And anybody who tries to tell you that is either lying straight to your face or they've been heavily propagandized themselves. Because listen, I have nothing against the Venezuelan people. I have nothing against Venezuela. And I hope their country does get better. I hope that for once we finally go and do the right thing. But that hasn't been our track record at all. The track record of the United States is not one of fixing these countries. And I can tell you very clearly right now, we don't have to wait 5 years to figure out what's going to happen here. The United States, they're going to go into Venezuela. They're going to overthrow the leader. We're going to install our own puppet leader. That's going to cause economic instability. And that's now going to create violent gangs. Oh, and then we have to take out the violent terrorists, right? So we start bombing the shit out of Venezuela. We start bombing the shit out of the violent gangs. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, we've taken on the oil, and by the time we're done, Venezuela now looks like Gaza. Well, it's time to leave. And in the case of Venezuela, if we do take all their oil, that's especially gonna screw them over because that's been Venezuela's main source of economic output. They were relying on the oil. That's literally the only thing that's been propping up their economy this whole time. So if we take that, we're literally gonna leave them with nothing. The Venezuelan people, they'll be left worse, more impoverished than they were before. So this isn't about what's best for Venezuela. And this certainly isn't even about what's doing best for the United States. Because the best thing that we can do for Venezuela is leave them the hell alone. But somehow, people make this argument that Venezuela will somehow be better off being run by a foreign country than by Maduro. And I just have a hard time accepting that logic because, of course, the president of Venezuela, who's actually from Venezuela and is actually Venezuelan, obviously, he's going to have the best interest of his own people at heart way more than the Donald Trump administration. I mean, just think about it. Trump's administration, they're obviously going to put America before Venezuela, at least one would hope, but that's debatable at this point. But he's definitely going to put the interest of Israel first, and he's definitely going to put the interest of the deep state, the billionaires, the corporations, and the military industrial complex first as well. So the interest of Venezuela, they're literally gonna get put last every single time at every single instance. And I don't know how anyone could think otherwise. You can show me as many videos as you want of celebrating Venezuelans, which by the way, it's now coming out that a lot of those videos are AI generated, which proves the point exactly that this is another media narrative designed to manufacture consent for US imperialism. But regardless of that, many people, these people, some of them probably are real, which some of them definitely are, but these Venezuelans, they can also, what stops these Venezuelans from being the victim of propaganda? They might be in for a rude awakening. These celebrating Venezuelans, they might be in for a rude awakening themselves because these people believe that the United States is this lesser evil that's going to come in and provide freedom and perhaps fix their country. But little do they know that the real villain has just arrived. Maybe Maduro was a level 1 boss, but the final boss is here. Darth Vader has just arrived, and I hate to say it, but these Venezuelans, they might be asking for more than they can handle, and they may quickly realize that things were better off under Maduro. And speaking of Maduro, this guy Maduro, he was an outspoken critic of the genocide going on in Gaza. This guy, like many other leaders around the world, has grown tired of the US thinking that it can go into these countries and do whatever the hell it wants, which is ironic because that's exactly what Trump's doing to Venezuela right now. We just walked into the place and abducted their leader, and that's the other thing that makes this so damn heinous because we actually think that we have the audacity to say that Maduro's a criminal and that Maduro's a dictator, but we're the ones at every single instance who violate international law. The United States, it's the biggest authoritarian and we act like the biggest dictatorship. And we think that we can do whatever we want. We behave with no accountability. Nobody can tell us what's wrong. Nobody can tell us that we're wrong. And so the hypocrisy is just stunning because the number one question that you have to ask yourself, and this is my final point here, but ask yourself this. Why are we specifically going after Nicolas Maduro? Think about it. The United States, we're allies with Saudi Arabia, where women can't even go outside without being covered up or they'll be killed. Our greatest ally is Israel, that's literally committing a genocide and bombing children live on TikTok every single day. I had no clue that we could just walk into a foreign country and take their head of state. And if that's the case, why haven't we barged into Israel in the middle of the night and arrested Bibi Netanyahu? Why haven't we gone over to Saudi Arabia and given them a taste, a nice healthy dose of our good old democracy? Again, why are we specifically going after this guy, this country, and why now? Well, part of that reason, it's definitely the oil, but the other part of it is exactly what I alluded to earlier in this video. Venezuela is 100% diametrically opposed to the interests of the imperialist United States and the Western hegemonic multipolar world order. Right before his capture, this guy Maduro, he was meeting with a special Chinese envoy. He was closely allied to countries like Russia, China, and Iran. And they've been seeking to join BRICS, which for those who don't know is a currency which these countries have created in hopes of replacing the US dollar. And not to mention, yes, Venezuela has more oil than Saudi Arabia. So yes, the United States is very much interested in taking that. And Trump is convinced that we'll make more money from taking that oil and selling it than from pursuing regime change. And that argument, that can also be debated because by the time all was said and done in Iraq and Afghanistan, we spent over 2 trillion US taxpayer dollars on those wars. So is it really worth it to steal Venezuela's oil and create another country that by the time all is said and done is probably going to be chanting death to America? I certainly don't think so. And that's all I have to say about this topic for now. I had a lot to unpack here and I had a lot to get off my chest, but this video, it absolutely had to be made because somehow, some way people are still falling for the propaganda and I just can't allow that to be the case. Not any longer. So for now, let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Do you think that the United States is doing the right thing by taking over Venezuela? Or do you agree with me that this is yet another instance of the deep state having its way and destroying another country with its imperialist goals? Make sure to sound off in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. That's all for now. And I'll see you all very, very soon.